Hello, you're listening to episode 14 of 8 Minute Movies, Knives 8, a podcast talking about the 2019 movie Knives Out in 8-minute chunks, presented by me, Kieran, and him, Peter. This is a sequential podcast that contains spoilers for Knives Out, so you should go and watch it first before listening and start this podcast season with episode 1.
And even that being the case, you can't introduce me as Peter. Won't have this.
Look, it's episode 14. I'm trying to mix it up a bit.
No, sorry that you're so bored of my name that you have to make up a new one.
All right. I apologize. I'll do that bit again. And him, Peter. I'm not going to edit the podcast. This is just how it starts now. I apologize. How are you doing, Yetier?
I'm doing okay. I'm still in the process of moving. Would you like to hear about my sinister next door neighbor?
Yes and no. I don't think you can name them.
No, I'm not going to name them. Let's make up a name for all of the players in this. So name a man who is a neighbor.
Brabastian.
Yeah, okay, fine, Brabastian. And name a woman who is a neighbor.
Georgina.
And name a young teenage a teenage girl. Name a teenage girl.
Reginald.
Okay,
sorry,
I might not remember though.
Sorry, I panicked. I wasn't expecting to have to do a Mad Lib this early into the show.
All right, okay. So, we've been up to the new place a few times now, and the last time I was up there, I saw Brabastian come home on his motorbike. And actually, skipping back a few months, we spoke to Georgina. Okay,
yes.
we spoke to Georgina,
the other neighbor,
and said hello. She seemed very friendly. We had a brief conversation, and she said, my husband's Brabastian, and I'm Georgina, and we didn't see him at the time though, but she seemed quite friendly, and I haven't seen her since that time.
Right.
So a couple of times ago that I went up there, I ran into Brabastian in the doorway, and because it's kind of it's a set of flats, and I'm in one, and he's in another, and he said, he seemed a bit sullen and a little bit, a little bit downbeat. It's like, are you moving in? Said, yes, I am. I'm Peter, and he said, I'm Brabastian, and I remembered the name from when I'd met Georgina before.
It's a memorable name.
So I said, I think I met Georgina before. And then he had this kind of faraway look in his eyes for a second. And he said something like, yes, Georgina. And then he kind of wandered upstairs and went into his flat. And right, and remembering that now I haven't seen Georgina since the first time. And then later, we were there again, and we ran into what was the other name? Reginald.
Reginald.
We ran into Reginald. She was on the phone, just going into the house. she was the sort of age where we couldn't tell whether she was someone's daughter or not, but or whether she lived there. She seemed pretty young, but it was unclear how young. And when we went to kind of, because she was on her way into the house, and when we went to follow, she was confused, obviously, because she'd never seen us before. She's like, "Oh, who are you? Oh, you're the new neighbor. You're the new neighbors, are you? You're just moving in next door. Oh, I'm just right next to you. Hi, nice to meet you. Seem very friendly." And she was sort of starting to ask us questions as we were on our way upstairs to the flat, but then kind of mid question, Brabastian opens the door and kind of hurries her in before before we can finish, or she can finish asking her question, or we can answer it, and just kind of ushers her in and kind of closes it without saying a word to us. So my working theory is that he's killed Georgina.
Yep.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's what I'd go to immediately.
We haven't seen Georgina, and he's being kind of weirdly furtive about it and doesn't really want any communication with the new neighbors, and seems a little bit paranoid. I'm going to say it definitely happened that way.
I have an alternate theory I'd like to offer at this juncture.
Okay.
I think that perhaps Brabastian has access to the Fountain of Youth and has simply used the water to de-age Georgina into Reginald.
That's an interesting idea, because Georgina never mentioned Reginald.
Yeah. See, that's why I thought this was definitely what happened.
Okay, yeah, that's possible, and it does explain all of the moments, all of the kind of odd little moments.
You have access to the garden, right?
Yes.
So the first thing I would do the next time you're there is check for shallow graves.
Yeah, good point. There is a very large mound, but too large to be like a grave, unless.
Well, that's just where he's burying all of the bodies.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention a little detail of this, is that when I first met him,
he whispered, "I killed her and I'll kill you too."
No. I was just looking out the window towards the garden and noticed that he had come back, and he was putting away his motorbike, and so he was just looking around, and he happened to notice me in the window, so I gave a little nod, and he kind of barely acknowledged. He looked upset, in fact, that I'd done that. and so if I have any other more interactions with Reginald, which I assume I will at some point, because we're going to be living right next to each other, and any of those seem suspicious in any way, I'll keep you updated on that. I'll keep you and the listeners updated on what's going on.
I think I think you might need to watch the documentary movie Rear Window.
Yeah.
That's very close to what's going on at the moment.
Who knows? Eventually, this could morph into a true crime podcast.
I hope it does. That's where the money is.
Yeah, that's true. I have been watching that second series of
oh boy. I stopped watching for some reason. I'm like 4 episodes into season 2, and it's such a good show. Like the ideal sort of cozy murder show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real good. I'm hoping to find out how it all wraps up, and there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to do that, because it's a television show.
Well, I mean, like, you might be murdered by your next door neighbor.
I might be, yeah. Let's see what happens. If there's a longer than usual delay between episodes next time.
Yeah, oh, good. Now I might have to put out an announcement if there's a hiatus that's like, don't worry, he's not dead, he's just moving.
That's probably the more likely explanation as to why there'd be a gap, just to be absolutely clear about this whole thing.
listeners, if he dies, I'll tweet about it.
Yeah, if you could manage being a little bit sad as well, that'd be lovely.
If I have to, I will.
Okay. So that's enough of that, I would say. How have you been?
I have been not too bad. I went for a walk outside today in the sun. I invited you to come along, but you didn't want to. He didn't want to, listeners, because it was 35 degrees outside.
Yeah, which seems sensible to me.
I was walking next to a river where there's cold breeze.
But I'd have to get there. I don't live that near you.
Oh dear. Yeah, that was quite nice. Sat outside under a tree, like people did in the olden days before the invention of PSPs.
Yes. Thanks for that up-to-date reference.
Look, like I was looking at my Nintendo Switch, but I couldn't remember what it was called. I definitely do not have heat stroke.
All right.
And
okay.
A little before that, I went into a cinema and I watched a film called Nope.
Now, this is by the Get Out person. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it's from director Jordan Peele, who is also famous for making Get Out and Us, two other pretty good horror movies.
I haven't seen Us, but I've seen Get Out, and I like Get Out a lot. So I'm kind of keen on seeing this one. I've seen a trailer. It looks very weird. The trailer really doesn't explain very much about what's happening in it, and I don't know that I want to know very much about it. It seems like the sort of thing where the less you know going in, probably the better. Is that accurate?
I would say yes. There are two trailers now. There was a trailer from 6 months ago, which I assume is the one you've seen. Tell me what you remember from the trailer.
I can't remember very much about it, because even as I was watching it, I was thinking, I don't want to watch this too closely because it seems intriguing. I know I want to see it, and it feels like something that would be fun to go into fresh, even as someone who isn't particularly. I don't particularly care about spoilers that much usually, but it just felt like that sort of thing where I'd want to not know very much. Kind of like Everything Everywhere All at Once. I enjoyed the idea of going into that one without knowing too much. I just remember a whole load of odd imagery. I don't remember a whole lot else about it, and something I can't. There was a line in it which was something like it not being about what you think it is about, but I can't remember exactly what the line was.
So that first trailer is it doesn't really give much away, which is good, but they released a more up-to-date trailer recently, which is more in the style of modern film trailers, in that it reveals more of what is happening in the movie. So I which I didn't see before I went to see it, but I would guess you shouldn't watch that if you don't want to know.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure which one I saw, because I did see it quite recently, this trailer. But I do remember that after watching it, I didn't feel like I had a good idea about what the film was about.
Did you... Oh god, it's so hard to be oblique about. This is an excellent thing to talk about in a podcast. A brand new movie that you haven't seen and don't want to know anything about.
I don't want to know about. I don't want you to talk to me about this at all.
Oh god.
No, it's fine. You can talk vaguely about it. I just don't want to. I don't want to have any kind of real nice surprises about it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't spoil anything in the film. It's got Keith David in it. I didn't know it had Keith David in it.
Okay.
That was a nice little surprise for me because I like Keith David.
Mhm.
Yeah. What else can I talk about? This is an awful section, Peter.
Yes, I mean, so far we've described an almost certainly fictional crime happening in my neighborhood and failed to describe a film that you've seen.
Well, I could describe it quite well. You don't want to listen.
No, that's true. Well, are we about done then? Do we move on?
It's very impressive. The special effects are very good. There are sequences that I wasn't expecting that I thought were good to look at with my eyes. There are some jump scares.
Would you say it's generally in the similar genre to his previous work?
What do you mean? Like, is it a horror film?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is a horror film. In pretty much in a similar genre to Get Out, I guess.
Okay.
But less mind control-y.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody says the Caligula.
Right.
Do you want to know the connection between Nope and Knives Out? Or can you figure out the connection between Nope and Knives Out? That's more fun. It's more fun if it's a game.
Can I figure it out?
Yeah.
But by what means?
You've seen the trailer. That's good enough.
I mean, I've vaguely glanced at the trailer while trying not to absorb very much of it. Yeah.
We're so bad at this. Why? I can see why no one sponsors us.
At least I bothered to concoct a murder in my mind.
I want to talk to you about this film. It's not my fault you haven't seen it.
Well, I mean, in many ways it is your fault because I would have seen it with you if you hadn't chose to go to it on a day where it was 35 degrees outside.
Cinema has air conditioning.
Again, I have to get there.
Come on, stop fussing.
I don't know. How do you figure that out? It's got the same. It's got the same second unit director. I don't know.
Oh shit! Hang on. Now I have to actually go and check if that's true. The main character of Nope is played by Daniel Kaluuya, who is also the main character in Get Out, where he stars alongside Lakeith Stanfield, who plays Detective Elliot, Lieutenant Elliot, in this movie. Yeah, there we go.
That's the connection.
Yeah.
But what about those second unit directors?
All right, hang on. No, all right, hang on. I'm on IMDb. All right, hang on. Nope. Nope. Do you notice they've made IMDb like harder to use? Like, I reckon that's on purpose.
Yeah, it's not as good anymore. You can't find the credits as easy.
It's not good. You can't find anything. All cast and crew. There we go. All right. Assistant director. Second unit assistant director. Nadeem Ashia. All right. Oh, no, wait a minute. Are they the... No, they're the second assistant director. I don't know what that is. Elaine Wood, second assistant director. All right. Is Elaine Wood responsible for Knives Out? No. God, well, can you imagine if she had been? We
It would have been great.
Let me sum up the podcast so far for our listeners. We've had one certainly fictional crime, a discussion about a film in the most oblique terms humanly possible, and like maybe a person worked on 2 films, except they didn't.
They didn't. No.
Please continue to listen. They're not all as bad as this episode.
No, some of them are worse, I would say.
Some of them are worse.
Yes.
Oh, God. Although, offhand, I can't think of any.
All right. Let's move on.
Shall we move on from that section that's supposed to be the real attraction of the podcast?
Yeah, is it? I don't know.
Very unclear.
Certainly the loosest part.
Oh, hang on. I got a bell.
All right. Where's
So-
my version of the bell?
So if we say the words thing or out, this bell will ring. He could have rung it a whole number of times while I was talking about get out, but he didn't. He could ring it. He could have rung it then, but he didn't because he doesn't know where his bell is. Listeners, if there's one thing you take away from this podcast, it's that it's important to know where your bell is at all times. At all times.
It's a shame I can't find my bell because you basically have free reign at this point.
Well,
there's nothing I can do.
No, of course, you can simply say, please ring your bell.
I refuse to lower myself to that level.
Very well. Okay. Shall we not talk about the thing?
Okay.
That's this section of the podcast. What wouldn't you like to hear about today? I don't know how this evolved into me asking you a question and you guessing what topic I'm going to be talking about.
I know, I don't like it because it means I have to remember names and things, which I'm not prepared for, ever.
But you can think about it. You surely remember the other 13 people and or things I've spoken about. Yeah, well, I'm going with that.
I want to know about whatever the name is of that guy that plays the Nazi child.
Do you mean you want to hear about Christopher Plummer playing Harlan Thrombey because that's what you're getting?
Let's do that instead then.
Yeah. Arthur Christopher Orm Plummer, CC. I don't know what CC is, and also Orm is a name. Born
CC is like a measurement of some kind, right?
Yeah, I was like either he's in cubic centimeters, or he's a carbon copy. I didn't look that up. This episode isn't going great.
Yeah.
Do we get do-over? Do we have one do-over per season?
There's no time.
Okay. He was born in December the 13th, 1929, and unfortunately died in February the 1st, 2021, so fairly recently. That's quite sad. He was a Canadian actor. His career spanned 7 decades, gaining recognition for his performance in film, stage, and television. He made his Broadway debut in 1954 and continued to act in leading roles on stage, playing Cyrano de Bergerac in Cyrano, 1974, Iago in Othello, as well as playing the titular roles in Hamlet at Elsinore, Macbeth, King Lear, and Barrymore. Plummer was born in Toronto, Ontario, and grew up in Senneville, Quebec. After appearing on stage, he made his film debut in Stage Struck, 1958, landing his first starring role that same year in Wind Across the Everglades, and won widespread acclaim for his performance as Captain George Von Trapp in the musical film The Sound of Music, 1965, alongside Julie Andrews. Have you seen The Sound of Music, Peter?
I have seen and heard The Sound of Music.
I've somehow managed to avoid The Sound of Music.
It's fine, It's got some catchy tunes in it.
All I know about it is where I've seen it referred to in other media. So I know that the Hills are alive with The Sound of Music with songs they have sung for 1,000 years from Moulin Rouge.
Yes.
And also, I'm led to believe there's a Nazi child singing a song.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen it.
The future belongs to me.
So some of the Nazi details didn't come across too strongly when I was watching this film as a young child, I think. But yeah, that seems to track. It's got that famous song about a deer, a female deer.
Oh God, I was thinking of the other famous song with like schnitzel with noodles.
Oh yeah, these are a few of my favorites. It's got a lot of famous songs.
Yeah. I know the upshot is I know a lot of songs for it, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's got extremely famous songs, and so it's probably quite a good musical. But it's been very long time since I've seen it, and I can sort of picture Christopher Plummer's character in it, but obviously there's a big time gap.
Oh yeah,
looks very different. If you hadn't told me they were the same person, I would have never have guessed it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird that some actors kind of look the same their whole career, and some evolve as time goes by. I watched a movie like an old like war film, and I kept like recognizing somebody, and it was Peter Capaldi, and he's always basically looked the same.
Yeah.
Like from, I think at 21 he kind of settled into looking a bit like an old man, and has just very slowly turned that dial up over time.
I mean, I can see the resemblance between young Plummer and old Plummer, but it's such an age gap that sometimes people look a bit like each other. I wouldn't have thought of it anything of it. Yeah, it's quite a thing to have such a long career, I think.
I dinged you because you said quite a thing.
So you
shit. You can't. No, I was referring to your crime. That's allowed. That's in the scrolls.
Maybe I was just feeling a little bit cheeky though.
I like that you said young Plumber and old Plumber, because that's like what you have to get to exorcise a toilet. Back to Christopher Plummer then. He played numerous historical figures, including Commodus in The Fall of the Roman Empire, 1964, Arthur Wellesley, the first Duke of Wellington in Waterloo, 1970, Rudyard Kipling in The Man Who Would Be King, 1975, Mike Wallace in The Insider, 1999, Leo Tolstoy in The Last Station, 2009, Kaiser Wilhelm II in The Exception, and J. Paul Getty in All the Money in the World. His film credits also include Malcolm X, A Beautiful Mind, The New World, Inside Man, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Last Full Measure, and, of course, Knives Out. Why we're talking about him, because he's in the movie that this season of the podcast is about.
I understand.
Plummer received various awards for his work, including an Academy Award, 2 Primetime Emmy Awards, 2 Tony Awards, a Golden Globe Award, a Screen Actors Guild Award, and a British Academy Film Award. He is one of the few performers to have received the Triple Crown of Acting.
Wow.
And the only Canadian to accomplish this feat. In 2011, he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor at the age of 82 for Beginners, 2010, becoming the oldest person to win an acting award from the Academy. And he also received an Oscar nomination at the age of 88 for All the Money in the World, making the oldest person to be nominated in any acting category in the Academy Awards. He's just a really, really good actor. Like, that's the upshot of this. He's very good.
Or is this just saying, like, if your career is long enough, you're bound to hoover up some awards? No, he's very good. And he was very good in Knives Out. And I think I've seen him in a couple of other things as well, and he's been good in those as well.
All the bits in Knives Out with him in are very entertaining.
Yeah.
And I got a little Knives Out fact for you here. The Man Who Would Be King from 1975 is one of Rian Johnson's favorite films. So frequently between takes, he would try to get Christopher Plummer to talk about working with the legendary John Huston. Um, oh, that must be fun if you're an actor having the director sidle up and be like, so. Oh no, they're still setting up the special effects. Do you want to talk about the man who would be king again? And now it's time to review your questions from the previous episode, I believe.
I assume that you asked me a full set of questions and I gave you answers to those questions.
Long-time listeners of the podcast might have noticed a minor error in the previous episode, where I, in fact, did not ask Peter one of these questions. So we did it between that episode and now.
Yes.
And if he hadn't called it out, none of you would have noticed, would you? So, if you were seeing this for the first time, who do you think the murderer is and how done they do it? And you said, starting with the tox report, blank says it's a suicide, so you're back to not having a theory. You don't think the manner of death presented at the start was correct.
Yes.
You feeling good about that?
I'm feeling okay about that, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what happens next? A question that I definitely asked you. You said, he starts to explain what's happening in the case, and he starts talking about donuts and holes.
Yes.
And yes, I definitely asked you that question last time. Actually, like that episode of the podcast hasn't gone out yet, so I can go back and comp that in and just make you seem like a fool.
But you're not going to, are you?
No, I'm not, but I could. Like, if it wasn't so much work, maybe I would. However, it is too much work.
Get on with it.
All right, I guess with that excellent podcasting, it's time for us to watch minutes 1 hour and 44 to 1 hour and 52 of Knives Out. Blanc corrects himself. He doesn't want the whole family kept out, and he mutters something in Wagner's ear. Oh, I said Wagner like he's German. Wagner's ear.
In Wagner, yeah, the composer, who's just in the corner.
Yeah, he was in the room too. I guess we're leaving that in. We don't hear what he is saying to Trooper Wagner,
but it's probably something along the lines of, "Bring in ransom."
Bring in ransom. Yeah. Marta tells Elliot and Blank that it's just like she told Ransom, that she killed Harlan. Blank agrees, but says this is the hole at the center of the donut. What she and Harlan did seems to fill it, but they must look closer.
And and then goes on this riff, obviously, about donuts and holes and donut holes and holes within holes. And
my note here says this speech is deranged and I love it.
My note says this film hasn't been out for very long, but to me this already feels iconic, kind of classic.
Oh, I hope there's something similar in the new movie. Of course there will be, but I'm going to read the speech.
Go on.
Should I do a southern accent? No.
Oh no, God no! You could do your. You have one in you. We know this. It's not.
I do declare.
It's not accurate, but you could use that if you wanted.
No, I don't want the first set of emails we receive for this season to be complaints. He says, a donut hole in the donut's hole, but we must look closer. And when we do, we see that the donut hole has a hole in its center. It is not a donut hole at all, but a smaller donut with its own hole, and our donut is not whole at all.
Yes.
This little speech almost got cut from the movie because Rian Johnson thought it was just too silly. But Daniel Craig convinced him to keep it in by playing it with the conviction of a crazy preacher.
And of course, it was the right decision. This is why directors, I think, just sometimes need people around them just to tell them that something is right or something is wrong.
Yeah, and he does. In fairness, he does seem very open to like changing stuff and listening to the cast. And I think there's going to be something about that coming up later in this episode. And if there isn't, remind me at the end, and I'll say the thing.
Yeah, it's not the first time that you've mentioned him just taking feedback. A moment. Yeah.
Elliot is exasperated, but Blank asks him just one question. Wow, was that hard?
Yeah, there you go.
Not doing that accent. At this point, Rian Johnson comments that Lakeith Stanfield is the grounding character in the movie because he keeps all the silly and excessive things tied back down to the real world.
Right.
Because obviously he is not standing for the bullshit that's going on with the donut hole in the donuts hole speech.
Right.
I think he says something like, "Look, Blanc, I know this is fun for you."
And he does. I made a note later, actually, that it does seem like he's having fun at this point.
Someone was looking for a crime to get the will cancelled, but Blanc was hired before the will was read. So that person must have known both the contents of the will and that a crime had been committed, and if the intent was to reverse Marta's inheritance, that she was responsible. Someone with a lot of knowledge there.
Yeah.
Blank struts around the room as he makes these points. He takes 2 identical bottles from Marta's medical bag, applies tape over their labels, and puts them on the table. That probably won't come up later or anything.
I actually think this is a really interesting detail because it kind of says to you that, because that doesn't come back for a little while. There's several more points that he goes through before he gets to that. So it shows you that he's in the process of putting this together all at once. And even as he's talking about this part, another part of his mind is thinking, at some point, I'm going to have to establish this part of the story that I'm going to tell, and is setting up that bit, even though that's not going to be for a little bit.
I didn't think about that, but that is a very good point. That he is he's basically gone. Oh yes. Also, I will need to do this shortly.
Yeah, it's almost like he is coming up with the solution in a similar way that they described earlier. Thrombey writing his stories, where the whole kind of thing comes to him at once.
Marta cries out, "Fran! She knew what I did and was blackmailing me." Fran wanted money, so she didn't want the crime exposed. Yeah, that's a good point. If it was a family member, they'd have had no reason not to just speak out, because obviously they would have known that Marta had killed him. Blank takes off his jacket and settles down into the knife throne, head in his hands. In the script, the knife throne was described as like a religious icon made of knives. And they were having trouble coming up with something until the prop people found an industrial barbecue grate and strapped knives to it.
It's pretty good.
I've got a little quote about it here. The ring of knives is set in front of the chair in the Thrombey's living room, all set in front of the chair and positioned so that the knives appear to be pointing right at the head of whoever is sitting in the chair. When originally asked if the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones was an inspiration, David Crank explained, "It wasn't, but I can see why people might make that connection," he said. It actually wasn't originally meant to be that way. It was originally a rectangular structure and the knives were pointed out. Eventually, after various versions, we got down to the final version you see in the film. Ryan wasn't exactly sure what he wanted with the knives, but he knew what he didn't want. And once we got to that ring of blades pointing in, it finally clicked.
Do you think you own enough knives to recreate that?
Can we go one episode without you calling me out for the fact that I own 1 or 2 knives?
How many knives are in your bed right now?
In it, none. Probably. Hopefully not.
in your bed. Because the reason I asked
how
that,
many sleep knives?
the reason I asked that question is because quite often we'll be in a call or something, and you'll just be like, "Oh, there's a knife in my bed," and
That's usually because I've been doing something involving knives. Why? Then I don't just leave them there for fun.
a lot of people would reserve their knifely activities for elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true, but I am quite lazy. The moving on, the production crew called this the knife donut.
I see why.
Did you notice that this is the first shot in the movie where the knives and the camera are all lined up so that they actually point at someone's head?
I don't know that I did notice that, no.
No, that's fun. In all of the other shots, especially at the start, we always see them from the left or the right, so that the knives are behind them, but not lined up with their head. That was on purpose.
But why?
Rian Johnson really wanted to keep the knife donut after production wrapped, but he couldn't because half the knives were rentals, so they had to be returned. Blanc explains that there was one truly guilty party behind it all who acted with malice and for personal gain. He calls for Trooper Wagner to come in, briefly confusing Marta, and he returns with ransom. This is such a silly gag because he says there is one person who acted with malice and personal gain. Then he says Trooper Wagner, and Marta's like, "What?" And he's like, "No." Although that honestly wouldn't be out of the question for an Agatha Christie style movie.
Yeah, no, it works. I like it.
Quite often is the detective who came to investigate. Ransom apologizes to Marta and says that he told them everything because he thought that the jig was up. Blanc asks Ransom why he hired him.
Yeah, he really does seem to be enjoying himself by this point. He's got some little smiles on at this point.
He's
really ramping up.
He's solved it all. He's got the solution in his head. He just needs to play it out for his audience.
Mm-hmm.
Rian Johnson here comments that this sort of scene, the denouement, is ideal for the language of cinema because you can do what he's about to do here, which is flashback to see different scenes from different perspectives.
Yeah.
He said he was a little bit nervous at the length of this ending scene in Knives Out, so he went back to rewatch its spiritual predecessors like Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile, and says that they're like 20 to 30 minute long scenes, so he was fine. Blanc says that Harlan and Ransom loved drama, and thus Harlan must have told Ransom everything. We see it in flashback here, Harlan and Ransom fighting, and Harlan says, "Not a red dime or word of his work to a single one of them, you included."
Yes, and alluding to that phrase that earlier Walt mentioned that Harlan was fond of saying.
Yeah, not a single red dime.
Yeah.
Back in the present, Blanc says, why would Harlan tell Ransom that Marta could beat him at Go? Why would the topic of the will bring up Marta? Ooh, that's really clever.
Yeah.
Again, we see it in flashback, Harlan telling Ransom that the will is changed, and him saying, "I'm warning you." Ransom dismisses all of this as conjecture. Blanc agrees, but it makes everything else make sense. Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's another example of Rian Johnson, following the cast's lead. Daniel Craig had memorized the last 30-odd pages of the script as if it was a stage play.
Oh, okay.
And so Rian Johnson just threw out the shot plan here and just kept going for longer and longer takes of him speaking. And it really works. I love it. The ending of this movie is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really well done.
Blanc says Ransom left, feeling the sense of clarity he confessed to Marta, because now he knows he's got to do a murder. In flashback, we see Ransom pull off the road, thinking, before he returns to the house. It's good that he returns to the house and he stops, before the carved elephant, not after or be after for.
Yeah. It's also a pretty cunning plan to come up with on the spot there. I
Yeah,
would say.
not. It doesn't take him long to figure out how to pop back and do a murder.
Right.
Maybe he's got some of his grandfather's skill in that area.
Yeah.
If only he'd put his effort into story writing rather than crimes.
Well, his father does say that he sees a lot of him in him,
Yeah, that's true.
and I think I mentioned when we first talked about that scene that I wasn't exactly sure what he meant by that, but maybe this is a bit of what he meant by that is that he's got that kind of mind.
Spark. Narrated by Blanc, we see Ransom going through the gate, climbing the trellis, and going through the trick window. Did you notice that Ransom puts his foot on the window ledge here, depositing the mud that Marta thought that she put there?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, that's clever. I like that. I think you did because I mentioned it already.
Yes, that is why.
I like sound so proud. He sneaks into Harlan's bedroom and grabs Marta's medical bag. Using a syringe, he swaps the morphine and ketorolac around, and he steals the naloxone, the life-saving antidote.
I wonder how he knew about the antidote.
I mean, it's. I don't think it's like. I think it's fairly common knowledge that naloxone is an opioid antagonist, and that it's usually around if you have morphine or it's more fun cousins like heroin.
Yeah, I suppose if he knew that was the medication that he was on, then he might have understood about the antidote as well. Yeah, sure.
And also, he was Harlan's research assistant for a summer.
That's true.
So I can imagine that maybe that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
Blanc says that he knew that if Marta killed Harlan, even accidentally, then the Slayer rule would nullify the will, and he'd get his money. Ransom, of course, knows what the Slayer rule is, because he was Harlan's research assistant for a summer.
Yeah.
Marta gasps, figuring it out. Blanc asks her to pass him the bottle of morphine from the table, and he'll explain. She picks up the two identical bottles, quickly trying one and then the other, and then passes him one. This was done as a little insert shot later to give a little bit more weight to the solution that they're trying to sell, where she picks up the wrong medicine, hesitates, puts it down, and then passes the correct one to him.
Right.
I mean, honestly, if I'd have been in her situation, I probably would have taken the tape off the labels and then he'd like...
Well, this is the thing.
I'm not smart.
This is the thing about this whole little detail to the solution. I guess we'll get into it in a second. Yeah.
Marta realizes that if the bottles have been swapped, then she must have accidentally switched them back and given Harlan the correct medicines. Blanc reveals that she didn't do it accidentally, taking the tape off the labels, revealing that she'd passed Blanc the morphine. Marta is such a good nurse that she wouldn't mix up the two accidentally, even without looking at the labels, because the liquids are slightly different.
Okay, so there's a couple of things here. One is, I don't know. I haven't seen the two liquids next to each other or seen them jiggled or whatever you would need to do in order to see the difference between them. But apparently it's a very subtle difference. Do we think it's plausible that someone with that level of experience would be able to tell the difference or not?
I mean, I'd say yeah, probably. I mean, because I mean, if you're handling something day in, day out, you probably subconsciously pick up on this stuff, even if you don't, I mean, maybe one is more dense, so the bottle is slightly heavy, stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree that much is plausible.
Mm.
The bit I wonder about though is I feel like personally at least, even if I was really, really good at telling the difference between these two liquids, I think I would check the label every time.
Yeah, and I think she sort of kind of is looking for that, but they're taped over. I mean,
Yeah.
and her instinct isn't to remove the tape like mine would be.
Yeah. Because
Ironically dooming myself.
I feel like I'd be so worried about making a silly mistake like she assumes that she makes at the beginning of the film that I would always just habitually check the label anyway, just to make sure.
Well, you've got to remember she had been drinking.
That's true. So I feel like, ironically, her recklessness in not checking the labels was what saved her in the end. But I do think that was still pretty reckless.
Yeah. Well, we won't quibble.
Yeah.
Blanc reveals that Harlan was, of course, perfectly fine, and if he'd followed her advice to call an ambulance, he'd still be alive today, and the blood tox report proves it. Marta sits in the knife throne, shocked. Everyone in the room sits in shocked silence, but Blanc isn't done yet. Oh, he's got so much more in him. He says, Great Nana said, Ransom, are you back again already? Because earlier she'd seen Ransom climbing down the trellis. And here he stresses back again already.
Yeah.
And we think we mentioned this earlier, that the whole case hinges on what she saw.
Indeed.
And he's the only person who sort of treated her like a human being throughout the whole movie. In his chair, Ransom laughs because they have no evidence, and it's just a fairy tale.
And that's the end of that segment. And I feel like it's a good place to split as well, because we're getting now into the next part of the explanation.
Yeah, the denouement is really heating up. This is the bit where Poirot would pull his gun if you watch the more recent movies. He never used to have a gun.
Yeah.
Ransom here says, this is stupid with 2 O's. And that's another line that they went back and forth on quite a lot, trying to decide whether it was too silly. But it made the cut.
Like it.
Yes.
It feels like something that he would say.
Yeah, he's very arrogant.
Yeah.
But yeah, that brings us to the end of that 8-minute segment of the movie that we are watching, which is called Knives Out. I don't know why I'm talking like this, Peter. You need to help me.
Slap.
So, I think some of these questions may become defunct from here on. Peter, if you'd seen this for the first time, who do you think the murderer is?
So I
do you think it's Ransom?
Well, I think Ransom is the attempted murderer, but Thromby killed himself.
Oh yes, that's actually true. But you definitely don't think there's any late-minute twists coming in.
No, I don't think we're going to find out that somehow they were re-switched or something.
You don't think Marta's going to turn to the camera and then do the killer voice? Yes, I killed the bastard and I'd do it again.
Yes, I saw Ransom do all of that, actually.
And I swapped them back.
Yes.
Very different movie.
Yeah.
What happens next, Peter? What happens next? That's the question that I'm asking you, and in fact did ask you in the prior episode. Don't fucking at me.
Yeah, well, there's just going to be more denouement, isn't there? There's going to be more of this explanation. We're going to get to the crux of the point being that Fran is in the hospital, which is something that I don't think Ransom knows at this point. And that is going to lead to a little bit of deception by Marta. I don't know whether we'll get to that in this episode. I think we might just about get to it at the end of it.
Yes, I think we might. I think we might get to it. But yeah, that was very good. So now we've got 2 episodes left. What are you thinking of the film so far, given that you've watched the bulk of it?
Well, as we said very early on, it's one of my new favorites. It's very annoying to me in a way that we've taken so long to record this podcast overall, because as people know, I don't watch the film while we're recording these podcasts, and I've wanted to because I like it so much.
Oh dear, sorry, I didn't realize we were denying you an important resource.
Yeah, by now I probably would have watched it again, because it is just incredibly enjoyable.
It's a very good movie.
Looking forward to being able to watch it normally again at some point.
Perhaps we'll watch it as a treat when the series is over.
Maybe so. And I am very, very much looking forward to the follow-up.
Oh yes, that's that presents us with a conundrum. Do we immediately do a season on an absolutely brand new film? Where are we? We're just throwing the rule book away.
I don't think we can get the projectionist to pause every 8 minutes so that we can record a podcast.
Oh, I don't know. I recently discovered that you can hire a cinema and they just give you like a HDMI input and you can put on whatever you want. So maybe we could. That'd be really weird. Oh, okay. Listeners, if you think we should do a live recording of this with you in the audience.
No, we can't have a double standard here. We tell everyone else not to experience the film for the first time like this, and now we're talking about doing that with Glass Onion. No.
Yes, you're quite right. Sorry, I'll slap my wrist. There we go. Listeners, if you have any comments or questions, you can email us at podcast@8minutemovies.co.uk, and I will print out your email and just sort of rub it against my face. Maybe I'll read it, but the rubbing is more important to me as a person. If you like the show, what you should do is tell a friend. If you don't have any friends, maybe join a night class and make some there, and then you can talk to them about the podcast. Or what you can do is leave a comment wherever you listen to it, on whatever format that you listen to it in. I don't know why I'm specifying that at the end. It's not like somebody's burning these onto mini disc and taking them away that way. Peter, help me, I'm breaking down.
I don't know. I feel like you're trying to keep me in the room so that keep me on the call so that the police can trace the call or something. Like this is the sort of energy you're projecting at the moment.
He's in London. Keep him talking. Oh dear. Well, the police are on their way to Brabastian's location as we speak. So, if you'd like to come and look at us on Twitter, I'm Kieran J. Walsh, and Peter is
that's Kestrel Pie. That's Kestrel like the bird, and Pie like the irrational number. If any of your neighbors might be murderers, get in touch.
Yeah, we could do a true crime podcast about it, and then we'd definitely get sponsorship, because that's the most important thing to us here. We'd like money. Okay, good evening to you listeners. Good evening, good night, farewell, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.